Hello everyone, this is Adrian, also known as Amedrianne on most writing platforms like Wattpad, Dream, Sofa Novel, Inkit, Web Novel, and Figment. I am also here to welcome you to TBC Publications Writers Camp. On this broadcast, allow me to share to you some helpful tips on how you can organize writing your story through a series of steps called the Planner. So are you all excited? I guess so. So let's move on. Every writer has their own unique way of writing. Some of us would probably think about every 16 years, a newborn female or male child is chosen as the heir of a kingdom. Or Cassandra Paris is an 16-year-old only child of the Paris group. It could also be the most scratch of the line of the century pilot chapters that most writers use nowadays. Like, my name is Peter Parker, a CEO of the biggest conglomerate in the Philippines. But what comes next after that? Most common dilemma that writers tend to experience these days is the writer's block. But believe me, such term is just a new way to reason out procrastination. You know, procrastination is a contagious disease, so you have to learn to get off it. It could also be because you begin writing your work the moment you think about it while doing your laundry, watching TV, planting plants, or even after you empty your bowl. Sorry. Yeah, without trying to consider plotting it thoroughly. And that's how you experience writer's block, because you don't have the end game. You just have the idea. You didn't plan it from the beginning to the middle to the end. So tendency is you really get to have a writer's block. Or it's not actually a writer's block. It's just an excuse. I consider it as a dead end. Every writer has what we call a dead end in each story, or it is where a loophole comes in. So you just have to manage it. I mean, it's manageable. You can find if you're creative enough, you will have, or you will have to think of something. You can come up with something to put on that loophole, get out of that dead end. Okay? Any writer can finish their story or manuscript only if they can put time by plotting the story well, just like I said. But sadly, only few writers affords the luxury to do such effort. Yes. Being novice in writing discipline is normal at the very beginning, but unable to learn and research about where you lack may result in poor story build-up, poor writing style, poor character growth, cliche plots and endings, and more likely, yes. Okay, let's just use writer's block, the writer's block, and so much more. As you don't have any guides to help you write what's going to happen next and thereafter. Okay? When you try to work your story out, try to remember about these three things that I'm going to tell you. First, it's the talent, perseverance, and creativity. No one can teach you talent. It's not easy to teach talent. It's actually inborn. But don't fret, because it is manageable. You can develop this skill, especially in writing, in time. As long as, of course, the next one will chime in, you have the perseverance or the determination. If you have this element, it's okay if you don't have the talent, as long as you have the perseverance to work it well and to improve yourself. Okay? With your determination to pursue finishing your story, you also need to maximize your creativity. And you put it all together, those three elements that I mentioned you, then it will help you ignite finishing your manuscript. Okay? Some neophyte writers tend to pattern their stories based after the beloved authors. I mean, yeah, it's most common these days to read about fan fictions. But my recommendation is to voice out your real writing voice. Okay. As a writer, such imitation is of value once you learn about the way you should construct your work and voice out your own writing style. So that's just an opinion. Okay. And then also, you have to avoid the perception that you always have to write for your readers. Yes, true, you are seeking for their opinions, but this is your story. God, you are the one to uh, decide. Okay, you are the one who should decide to uh, write what's going to be in your chapters. It's not your readers. Okay, it's not because it's the latest hot cake in the market now, then you will have to do it the same way. It will only make you less creative and, yeah, an underdog writer. So there are readers who actually demands or commonly demands some of the following in the story. First is a strong plot. Second is a well-defined setting or background. And then the character growth and character's personality. A well-defined vision of how you want to plot your story. Okay? And a strong style that brings a vivid images on your minds. And of course, the grammar and syntax. You don't want to wish your readers to be like an editor while reading your work, of course. So you have to make good use of these key points to improve them. I myself keeps on improving myself from time to time, and I wanted to share to you that improving yourself will do better regardless if you don't have any talent for writing. I myself doesn't have a talent for writing. I just have the guts. I just have the determination to pursue this passion because I really love writing. Okay, and there are writers actually out there who write without outlining their story and just trust what's stored in their heads. Like I mentioned a while back, they tend to have this idea instantly on their head and then just write it down and finish the story. Those, what you call, are talent. But, okay, it is not recommendable. I mean, for myself, based on my experience and the opinions from my peer writers, it is actually not recommendable, as you would actually end up having the dead end or the writer's block at the very least. Well, like I said, every writer has a unique way of writing, and you have to find out what works for you. But for beginners, I highly suggest that you learn all the process and the story structures and the way it works for you, or how it works first. Okay? And that's what we are going to talk about today. Before we can move on to the steps that I'm going to introduce to you, allow me to give you some important practices that you need to remember before starting on your work. Just 5. It's very basic. The first one will be considering setting up a good place or area in your home, in your apartment, where you can concentrate finishing your manuscript. You should surround yourself with the most urgent things that you need, like a laptop, your phone, your charger, pen and a paper. And of course, you have to make sure that your area is properly lighted, and you have to use a natural light when it's daytime. And for those who love working at nights or the night owls, I highly suggest that you have your own lamp apart from the computer, because it would actually make your eyes irritated in the long run, and it's not really healthy to do that. And then the second one will be, always take note that without discipline, you will not succeed, no matter how good or talented you are as a writer. You should train yourself to at least try to write down a few words each day, or at least a chapter a day, so that you can be motivated to finish your work in a short span of time. Setting a time within a day for your writings is good, actually. It's a good practice. The third one will be staying away from distractions that could take away from what you are doing. And this these are commonly the social media. Yes, you have to stay away from social media, because once you try to open up your Facebook, open up your Instagram, open up your Twitter, that's it. You lose your focus. Okay? Setting a different time for your social media as well is going to help you be focused on your target for that time. So, first is the setting up a good place. Second is discipline. Third is the distraction. Fourth is the very important one, and I love this as well, is to remember not to starve yourself while working. Yes. At least put something to nibble while working. Nuts, maybe, because it's really healthy. And you could also have crackers, but less with the junk foods, right? And remember, your brain needs food to function. And the fifth one will be to keep reading. As we all know, learning is a never-ending process. You need to fill up your mind with new knowledge and every now and then to improve your skills. Remember this line, guys, that a successful writer is not only equipped with a pen as his sword, but also knowledge as his other weapon. So, if you're all set, then let's draft. For the first step of our writer's planner, it will tackle about your story. Tell us, what is your story all about? At this part, writing your story may be stressful without identifying the theme you want to track. There are too many available ideas out there that you can't imagine. There are tons and tons of ideas, as a matter of fact, and you could just be creative enough to pick one and then just try to merge the others onto it. So at this point, if you have a pen and paper there, I want you to try writing down what your story is all about. Just bullet it, highlight the very important place, events, and scenes that you wanted to import in your story, so that you could finish without spending too much time on it. Just a short, brief plotting will do. And then the next step will be your story genre. Some of you were already aware what genre means, right? It is the classification or cluster where your story belongs. So it could be fantasy, it could be romance, it could be tragic, it could be horror, it could be werewolves, about vampires, and so on and so forth. At this part, I want you to write at least 2 to 3 choices. Okay. And then you can still add up later, but 2 to 3 will suffice, or 1 or 2 will suffice. And then you can move on to our third step, which is your story title. Here you can think about the story title later on when you finish your manuscript. But for those who already have an idea, you can write it down and just use it as a guide to help you decide on the finality for later. Okay? The next one, the fourth step, will be the characters. This is my most favorite part of writing and organizing the story, because at this part I get to remodel or define a specific persona out of my own head. He or she is not existing in the real world, but in my head, she or he is existing. And the most fun here is to think of names for them. Okay? So at this part, I want you to identify their names, ages, date of birth, physical and emotional attributes, goals, and weaknesses. It is important that you interview them, as you, as the writer, should be the first one to know what kind of character do you have, and how their traits, how their weaknesses, how their strengths could affect their decision making as the story progresses. So it is important before you begin your story to interview your characters, from the protagonist to the antagonist and even the minor characters. Okay? The next one will be the plot. And I mean, everyone get confused on how to write the plot. I had a hard time writing my plot, but in time I was able to manage it well using the story mountain. I mean, some of you could be familiar with the story mountain. It's very common. It has three basic parts, which is the beginning, the climax, and the resolution. And for each part, they have sections. For the beginning, you have the plot hook and the rising action. It is where you make your readers get into the hook stage and wanted to flipping the pages more. And the rising action comes the entrance of a problem or a conflict. It is where the middle part comes in, or the climax, and the falling action where your heroine or your hero starts to figure out or starts to work with your other characters in solving the conflict. And of course, the third part, which is the ending or the resolution, is where you have your happily ever after, or if not, at least the ending of your story. So actually, writing your plot can be complicated if you haven't wrote down the first parts that I've mentioned a while back. So it's important that you have the key elements to fill up the loopholes that you will be needing for your plot. That's why I actually ask you to prepare your character, your story genre, what is your story about, and then ask you to bullet it down, because you will be needing those things to create your plot. Okay? Then this time, after your plot, you will have to start identifying the setting or the background of your story. When identifying this part, you will have to ask some questions for yourself. When did it happen? Where does it take place? What is the social climate? Just some few things to ask yourself before you start thinking about the setting. For this part, you may option to guide yourself using the 5 senses. How do you want your readers to feel, to see, to touch, smell, and taste? The taste, I mean, in a similitude sense of manner, like, it smells so good that I could almost taste it. Things like that. Some writers actually literally wrote down the exact location based from the reality, especially when they're writing about contemporary concepts or settings. I actually am working on a contemporary type of setting, so I have to mention some real places on the maps, and just wanting to romanticize it more by using the 5 senses, and how I describe the place through the sense of smell, see, touch, feel, and taste. So it's actually depends on the writer how to romanticize your work. Okay? Then once done with the nearly 90% of your manuscript foundation, you already have done with your what's your story all about, what's your story genre, your characters, your title, your story plot, and your setting. Now comes the story blurb. Okay, we all know what is a story blurb, or what blurb is. But for those who are not aware or familiar with the blurb, a blurb is actually a short description you often see at the back page of a trade paperback book or the inside dust jacket of a hardback cover. Generally, a blurb actually consists of 150 to 200 words. It depends on the author or the marketing agent that on how they wanted to present the blurb of a story. Most readers already have a list of books in their mind. Even you as a reader also have your own preferable list. Even I as well. And it is important that you know how to highlight your book should you want these readers to buy or get to be interested in your books. And it should have the same elements that your readers are looking for. Show them why your book is for them. That's just the basic marketing strategy that you have to work on whilst writing your story blurb. So that's just it. I actually had just a few steps to mention from this broadcast. And I wanted to surprise everyone for this broadcast because what you actually heard from this broadcast will be put into a physical book. Wow! Yes, you heard it right. I'm going to have a self-publish about this workbook or this planner, which is going to be printed also here in TBC Publications and will be out next month, November 2020. I actually had work on this book back during the quarantine days because I wanted to work on my novel and make my work more easier. So I made a self planner on my own and wrote it down on a notebook and think about, hey, what about trying to create a workbook which is a helpful one for the writers, especially mostly the beginner ones who doesn't know how to structure their story. And that's how it came to me. And I'm really looking forward that the viewers from here and the others who wanted to try working on their story will be ordering this book once we launch the pre-orders. For the pre-orders, I am encouraging everyone to please stay tuned at my page, Amedrianne Stories, on Facebook for the posting of the pre-order link where you can order this one. It will soon be available via TBC Publications as well. And I'm very excited because this is going to be my first self-published book. And I'm looking forward for you guys to at least support local authors like me and the rest of the writers of TBC Publication who you will be seeing for the next broadcast in the coming days. And guys, thank you so much for watching this broadcast from the very beginning up until this moment. I could not thank you enough, and I wanted to thank TBC Publications for granting me this opportunity to be able to have my short talk here at TBC Publications. I'm very, very grateful to have Kuya Jarek Lago as my fairy god publisher. I've always called him that way, and he's very, very accommodating. And yeah, this book was actually made, I mean, book cover is actually made by TBC team, and I'm very, very happy about the results. It made them look, it actually look more extravagant and sophisticated than what I have imagined. Thank you so much for giving that look for my book. And to all of you guys who are watching, thank you so much for the comments, and I hope you have learned something from this broadcast. And once again, this is Trainer Adrian, aka Amedrianne, signing off. Thank you so much guys for watching.